Welcome, everyone. I'm Jen Farmer. I'm the CEO at the Friedreich Ataxia Research Alliance, and I'm joined by my colleague, Kellen Madden, who's the Manager of Patient Engagement. We're going to moderate today's webinar with Biogen. I want to just make a few announcements before I introduce our speaker today. First is I want to thank Biogen for hosting this webinar today to provide information about the development of omaveloxolone for children with Friedreich's ataxia. This is the primary topic and focus of today's webinar, the development of OMAV for children with FA. We recognize that there might be other questions that community members may have around omaveloxolone or Skyclarys, but we're not going to be able to address those today. We're going to only be able to really address questions related to the pediatric development and the trials that are going to be presented today. So just wanted to help manage everyone's expectations at the beginning, kind of what the scope is for our conversation today. And so with that, I would like to introduce our speaker. Steph Fredette is the Vice President and Head of Neuromuscular Development at Biogen. And it's been a privilege to get to know Steph over the last 18 months, 2 years, and work with you to get to this exciting point where we've got clinical trials of OMAV in children. And so with that, Steph, I'll turn it over to you. If folks have questions, you can put them in the Q&A box below, and there will be time for Q&A after the presentation.
Thank you, Jen. And again, thrilled to be with you all virtually. I wish we could all be in person, maybe someday. But before I dive into BRAVE, I just wanted to take a second to say thank you. Thank you to you, Jen, to FARA, to this community for welcoming Biogen into the FA family. It's been a real privilege to learn from you all and to really get to see firsthand what a force of nature the FA community is. And I think it goes without saying that Biogen is deeply committed to helping address the needs of FA patients, people living with FA around the world. And I'm really excited to talk about one of those many efforts today with you all. We can go to the next slide, please. So just a couple of disclaimers. Jen noted that this webinar is focused on the phase 3 pediatric BRAVE study, which we'll get into in detail. Briefly, as many of you know, omaveloxolone is an NRF2 activator that's approved for the treatment of FA in individuals 16 years of age or older. But for individuals not yet 16, OMAV is an investigational product, and the safety and efficacy have not yet been evaluated nor established. Next slide, please. This is just my disclosures. As Jen noted, I do work at Biogen and hold stock. So before we jump into BRAVE specifically, I thought it'd be useful to take a step back and look at the omaveloxolone pediatric development plan a bit more broadly. So starting in 2024, we initiated a study that some of you may have heard about called the BOLD study. So this is a phase 1 study designed to identify the dose to ultimately be tested in the phase 3 BRAVE study. And the BOLD study is ongoing. In fact, we're looking to enroll one final cohort here soon, but we're actively pulling learnings from that study into the BRAVE protocol in real time. And you'll see how the interplay is working out on subsequent slides. This includes the age-appropriate dose levels as they're identified in BOLD. And so with these data, these early data from BOLD in hand, we're nearing initiation of the phase 3 BRAVE study, which we can talk about on subsequent slides. And before we get into the details, I think it's important to note that the BRAVE study, it's really been sort of it takes a village approach here, because it's not lost on us that it's a very fluid environment. Our understanding of the disease in pediatric patients is evolving. Our understanding of the right clinical outcome measures is evolving in real time. And so this study design that we'll talk about today has been heavily influenced and informed by learnings from the community, natural history data, discussions with FARA and with academic clinicians and people living with the disease. And so again, just a huge thank you to everyone that's provided input to date. So the design. So BRAVE, it includes a 12-month randomized placebo-controlled period. So this is part 1 of the study. in which approximately 255 participants will be randomized 2-to-1 to receive omaveloxolone or placebo. So that means that you have double the chance of receiving drug as compared to placebo in part 1 of the study. Importantly, after completion of that placebo-controlled period, all participants will have the opportunity to enroll in the open label extension period or part 2 of the study. The primary objective of BRAVE is to evaluate changes in upright stability. This is a measure of how well someone can stay balanced while standing or walking at that 1-year time point. And the upright stability measure will be evaluated in what we refer to as the primary analysis population. So this is a subset, about 207 of those 255 participants, and specifically these individuals will be ambulatory at baseline and between the ages of 7 and 15. But of course, we also want to understand the effects of OMAV in the broader pediatric population. So we're also enrolling a cohort of non-ambulatory individuals as well as individuals 2 to less than 7 years of age. I will note that that last cohort, so the 2 to less than 7 years of age cohort, will not begin enrolling until we have identified the appropriate dose regimen through the BOLD study. So there will be a bit of a delay for that last cohort. Next slide, please. So looking at some of the key eligibility criteria for BRAVE, I noted that the age range will be 2 to 15 years, and it will be important that participants have a genetically confirmed diagnosis of FA. Participants are required to be symptomatic and not have any potentially confounding concurrent illnesses, such as uncontrolled diabetes, history of liver disease, or significant cardiac heart disease. And I know that this will be a natural question that comes up, so I think it's worth noting that the study does require participants refrain from investigational or approved FA therapies because we need to establish and understand the safety and efficacy of OMAV on its own in the pediatric population. But this is something that we'll continue to monitor as we learn more about the OMAV in this study. And importantly, as noted here at the bottom of the slide, neither you nor your insurance provider will be charged for the cost of any of the tests or procedures that are performed as part of the BRAVE study. Now a bit about what study participation entails. So part 1 of the study is a bit more labor intensive, if you will. So this will consist of 6 to 7 in-person visits over the first year. And then part 2, there will be 2 to 3 visits within the first 3 months, and then visits in person every 6 months thereafter. And of course, we'll be looking at measures of safety and the effects that OMAV is having on the participants' FA symptoms. We talked about upright stability as the primary endpoint, but we're looking at a number of additional efficacy measures, including measures of quality of life, activities of daily living, and so on. And OMAV, it's taken, of course, orally, so it will be taken once daily. The dose, again, is determined by the data that we're generating in the BOLD study. And OMAV it's a capsule, and it can be taken as a whole capsule or sprinkled, opened up and sprinkled on applesauce. Next slide, please. So BRAVE will be conducted at approximately 30 sites across 16 countries, and you can see a full list of those sites on clinicaltrials.gov. Here we're listing the US sites. I'll save you a trip by mentioning, if you bear with me, that we are planning to conduct pending regulatory and ethics approvals, the study in Australia, in Brazil, Canada, Denmark, France, Germany, Ireland, Italy, the Netherlands, Spain, the UK, and as you see here in the United States. And we're hoping to initiate screening in this study very soon, and we'll hope you look out for communications to understand when we begin recruiting. Next slide, please. So importantly, consistent with all of our Biogen studies, we do support both coordination and coverage of travel expenses. What is covered and offered does depend on the distance to the study location, but it can include ground transportation, flights, and overnight accommodations. And if you're interested in participating in the BRAVE study, you can do a couple of things. Of course, you can always speak with your doctor or your child's doctor. Clinicaltrials.gov does include information about the BRAVE study, so you can find out even more than I've talked about today via clinicaltrials.gov. And importantly, we have what's called a patient navigator support line. So you can call that line directly and to speak with someone about potential participation and where sites are available and where sites are actively recruiting for the study. And with that, I will just end again with an immense thank you to all of you that are watching, and to Jen and the FARA team for having us on. And again, for all that has gone into planning this study. We are all hands on deck trying to get the BRAVE study off the ground and operating with an enormous sense of urgency to potentially get the study up and rolling, and then hopefully ultimately expand the OMAB indication to include pediatric patients as well.